I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector podcast. And I have joining me today the president and CEO of Bravada Gold, Joe Kizis. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, it's always good we have these chats, and this one seems to be particularly timely. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's talk, for those that aren't familiar with Bravada Gold, let's give them the elevator pitch, 10,000-foot view.
Yeah, we're a prospect. We're really an exploration company, sort of a modification of the prospect generator model. So we've acquired projects specifically in Nevada, specifically for gold and silver, and we use the, very wide and long history of exploration in Nevada to acquire projects. We have currently 9 projects that we're looking at, including one that's pretty much brand new. And what we do is we develop the targets on the project, basically bring them forward. In some cases, that includes some initial drilling just to verify a target that's there. So we've done that over time. That reduces the amount of money that we use from shareholders. We bring in partners to do, more significant resource development. And we have a number of projects in various stages, including, very late stage. Our Wind Mountain project is quite late stage right now. And we have a lot of very exciting exploration targets.
Yeah. Nevada itself has just kind of heated up again this summer, particularly the Walker Lane trend. There seems to be a lot of staking going on, a lot of exploration that's kind of revved up in that region. All of this seems to come after Anglo Gold's big discovery that they've made in the trend. You guys have several projects in the trend. How is this affecting what you guys are doing?
Yeah, well, it was, that Silicon was a real eye opener for a lot of people. We weren't 100% surprised that they made a discovery, but we were surprised at how large it is. It's over 13 million ounces of gold, and on surface, there's virtually no gold at all on surface. Something that we've recognized from our work on these epithermal systems over time is that you can get barren tops. And if you understand where you are in the system, then, oftentimes you can drill deeper and find, the significant mineralization. So in other words, the fluids move up, right? At some point, they drop their gold out, but they don't just stop there. They continue on to the surface, and the surface oftentimes looks like what you see when you go to a place like Yellowstone. There are geysers and hot springs and, those type of things. So, if we recognize that we're at the top of one of these old systems, ones that carried a lot of gold, those areas are now being relooked at for, potential for gold at deeper levels where there's boiling and all the gold dropped out. So, conceptually, it's sort of an evaluation and a progression in our understanding of these deposits. Many of these deposits were eroded to the point where the gold was sticking out of the ground, and the old timers loved these projects. And a lot of the old historic mining was basically on some of these things, like the Midas camp and things like that. But there are areas that have been not as deeply eroded, and one of them is actually a couple of miles from the old Midas camp itself. And Hecla drilled some very spectacular high-grade mineralization underneath basically barren material that would have been what you get around a hot spring. So basically the surface is where the barren fluids came, but they're a guide to where there could be some significant mineralization at depth. So we've applied that model on a number of our projects.
Yeah, it's one of the things about Nevada that I've always found interesting. It's the kind of this thing about mobsters and miners. The desert was really good for hiding bodies and gold. So it's an opportunity, and yeah, you're exactly right. 13 million ounces is nothing to shake a stick about, and it's going to grab a lot of attention. And there's been a lot of staking and a lot of new exploration come into the area. And you folks have seemed to have joined into that staking process and found some new ground to work.
Yeah, so we have some projects that we've been working on for quite a while. Our Highland project has, some beautiful examples of what sinter looks like at the top, geysers and that sort of thing. So we've been developing that slowly. Again, we try not to spend a lot of the money drilling something out that, is in the earliest stages. We try to accumulate a number of projects that reduces our risk on any specific one. So, once we'd been to Silicon and had a look at that, the Geological Society of Nevada, I was part of the tour leaders, and we did a tour of Silicon in 2022, right after they announced their first, resource, which was like 3.8 million ounces. Didn't include much about the Merlin deposit, but we got to take a look at that as well. It's pretty subtle on surface. There's lots of color and that sort of thing, but that's the basically spent fluids that go into the rock, change the rock from rock to a lot of clay. Oftentimes it's very colorful, but there's no gold, and a lot of people have recognized that area in particular and other similar areas in Nevada because you can see that on satellite imagery. The ground is pretty bright and colorful. But if there's no gold, then it was pretty high risk to really do any significant work, particularly the deeper drilling. A lot of the mineralization at Silicon it starts about 250 meters below the surface, so it's quite deep. Parts of Merlin are shallower. So, there were some areas that we had looked at previously, or I had looked at actually previously. The project that we just staked, we call it East Walker, is one of those areas. It's a big clay-rich soil, very bright colors. You look at the clay mineralogy, it's the type of thing that you can get above some of the vein deposits that are well known along the Walker Lane. And so we've acquired a number of claims right now. We're still kind of sorting through which ones we want to keep and which ones we want to continue to add to. But we did find some historic work in doing some digging. There was some drilling in the 1980s, and most of that was pretty shallow, but one of the holes had some significant mineralization. Again, we have no way to verify the results, but there was over 30 meters of over a gram. So, it's a big system. That's what caught my attention initially, but then the fact that as you get deeper in the system, we're starting to pick up some significant gold mineralization. There's some other holes that were drilled in the same small cluster, but primarily the whole region of alteration has not been drilled. There's a few widely scattered holes that we don't have data for, but in the mid 1980s, people weren't drilling below 400 feet or 125 meters of depth. So that was pretty common to basically drill the top, which all the gold would have dropped out before it got to that point, but still they're acid fluids, and they changed the rock to clay, and all the bright colors that are associated with that transition. So it was an impressive look, but basically underdrilled and, well, virtually undrilled in most areas. So we're pretty excited about this project. There's still quite a bit of work to be done. There's surface mapping to try to understand the stratigraphy, some of the structures. Some of the structures are pretty obvious. Some of the stratigraphy it's pretty straightforward, but there looks to be a lot of kind of detailed complications. We want to make sure we understand that before we start talking about drilling. So that's a process that we'll be working on over time. So we're pretty excited about it. It's open ground. There's not much open ground out there anymore. And in fact, we're surrounded by a lot of claims in the area right now. There are historic operations in the area. Just to the west of us is a historic Bodie mining camp. It's in California. It's a state park now, but the old timers took out over 1.5 million ounces of gold and 1 million ounces of silver. The old Aurora district, if any of you have read Roughing It by Mark Twain. Mark Twain worked there for a while, so he talks about it in his book Roughing It. But that's a historic district that was producing, I think, into the 70s, something like that. Anyway, there was a small group that did a little bit of work after that, but they produced over 2 million ounces of gold. It's now held by Hecla, and they're doing an aggressive drilling program there right now. There's a recent discovery a few years ago by Headwater Gold. They've joint ventured the project with Newmont. Newmont's aggressively drilling this year and will earn a majority interest, is from what I understand. That's just due south of Aurora. The district is quite extensive. The old Borealis mine has been reactivated by a group that's just come public. So a lot of activity in the area, and we think we got a nice chunk of the district.
Yeah, it's exciting times for the region. I've always wondered though, when someone like Anglo comes in and gets an unexpected discovery like they have, and there's people like yourself in the region that have been working there for a while, does that unexpected find cause you to go back and look at what you've done to think that, hey, maybe there's something a little bit deeper than where we went?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as we see more examples of these types of deposits and what they look like on the top, I mean, if it's been eroded down to the level where the gold is, that's useful to know, but you're going to be expanding what's already known. So what these are completely blind targets that people are finding, and that's pretty exciting. Now, Anglo Gold is also one of our neighbors. They're doing exploration there because they think there's a similarity on their ground. It's very close to ours. It's maybe a mile away from a corner of their ground. So, that was a good nod of appreciation that we're on the right track here, when the people that have made the recent discovery that we're all kind of looking to replicate have taken a big position as a neighbor of ours right now.
But all this exploration that requires money, and you guys have a private placement that's open for accredited investors now to help fund the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, that's right. We're looking for a fairly small financing. This project here, I think, deserves a bigger company to come in with a lot of deeper drill holes. But prior to that, and to develop value for us as a shareholder, there's pretty cheap exploration that can be done, the mapping and the sampling, the 3D modeling and that sort of thing. Fortunately, I've been able to accumulate a lot of historic sampling that people have collected in the area, and some minor amounts of drilling data. So we're off to a pretty good start there, but there's still some geology that we need to do. So the financing itself, it's a 3 cent financing. We're doing a million shares, so $350,000. So, that's basically to put us in a position to, dress that project up to the point where we can bring in a major to spend some significant money. Since we are not seeing a lot of the vectors on surface, we're going to need to do a fair amount of geophysics, and you can easily spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on geophysics. But, if you just do winging holes without having that guidance, then you're almost setting yourself up for failure. So rather than do that and try to, keep raising money at these incredibly low prices that pretty much all the juniors are kind of faced with right now, our thought is that this is a pretty attractive area. There's a lot of competition for properties, so we've got a nice chunk of it right now. And what we need to do is get it farther along to start spending the really expensive dollars on geophysics, and then following that up with quite a bit of drilling. If we were to drill the 1 or 2 holes just as a concept hole, I would have been thrilled to get the hole that was drilled in 1985. So basically, we can step over that point. We've demonstrated that it's a large system, that we know something about the geometry and the structures that are mineralized, and know that at depth there's significant gold. So the majority of the ground that we have is actually quite a bit higher than the level where the gold was discovered in that historic hole. That's important because then that tells us that our idea of having basically a barren surface alteration is likely to have some gold at depth. Now, there's no deposit yet found, but this is what you like to see, is a big system, that there's some verification that it does contain gold. And there's actually several showings around that have gold in them in the lower part of the stratigraphy. So, we're pretty confident that sort of the concept is there. It's just a question now of, putting the work together and saying, okay, well, this is the kind of program we need to test it. And geophysics is going to, take a key role for us in this case, just because we're so far up that you can't really use you can use some of the guidance. For example, we've got examples of what's called geyserite. So that is the old surface that looks like what Yellowstone looks like today, with hot springs popping out of the ground. So there's some diagnostic features of that rock. We have that exposed in one area that's stratigraphically hundreds of meters above where the gold was found, farther to the west in the lower part of the stratigraphy and the lower part of the topography. So yeah, it's a model that's, I was always suspicious of, and the more data we're getting from it, the more encouraged I am that we're right. So
That's the fun part about these early stages is that it's like a package under the Christmas tree. There's something there, we just don't know what it is yet.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. But that's where the kind of the upside is on these things. Everybody's complaining about the discovery rate. Well, that's because there are very few people doing discovery. Most of the discoveries are, adding to resources that have already been known. To find a brand new silicon is really, I mean, that's the prize that we're really all trying to find. So we're trying to use as much science as we can apply to, which of these areas are going to be the ones where you can find another silicon and Merlin. So that's our plan. The money we're using is, like I said, it's, keep this moving forward. And a lot of our other projects, we've already done a lot of that work. So they're basically drill ready. We have drill targets ready to drill on our Highland project, our East Manhattan. We have projects those are all sort of grossly within the kind of wide space that we call the Walker trend, the Walker Lane trend. So same thing with our Wind Mountain project. We've done a lot of work. That one I think needs to go to a mining operation, and so we're looking at potential partners to take that into the the mining realm. It's not our forte, so we're willing to step aside and turn that over to someone that's probably a smallish type miner, but a lot of those groups are not really flush right now. Maybe after some some high gold prices for a while, then they'll be a little bit more aggressive in taking on new projects.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're certainly at the ground floor of opportunity. So if people want to participate in the private placement or just simply follow your progress, how would they do so, Joe?
Yeah, well, you can, we have bravadagold.com, that's our website. So a lot of the information we put on that. Jay Onis is the fellow that you talked to about doing the financing. He's in our Vancouver office. And I guess I should give you a phone number for that, or you can maybe add it at the end.
We'll add the phone number to the Vancouver office at the bottom.
Yeah. So contact Jay Onis, or they can contact me, but probably Jay is the one he's the one that's spearheading the financing.
Wonderful. I look forward to having you back on the show and learning what you've learned through your exploration process on this new project.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. It's good to talk to you as always.
Always. Thanks again, Joe. Bravada Gold is a paid sponsor of the Prospector News. The host owns shares and warrants in Bravada Gold bought at the market for investment purposes. The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.